Hi everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started, and as people keep joining, they can just catch up. This is Jessie Whittish with Kentucky Youth Advocates. I am joined here by several other team members from Kentucky Youth Advocates, and thank you to all of you for joining today to learn more about Children's Advocacy Day and get prepared for that. This webinar will hopefully give you what you need to feel prepared for Children's Advocacy Day on January 23rd, and hopefully prepared to be an advocate for throughout the rest of the legislative session as well, because there's still a lot of days left in the session after Children's Advocacy Day. So hopefully that is just the beginning of your advocacy during 2020. So some of the stuff we're going to cover today, we're going to talk about the Children's Advocacy Day agenda, also a checklist for before, during, and after Children's Advocacy Day, and a brief overview of some of the Blueprint for Kentucky's Children policies that we're asking advocates to promote on Children's Advocacy Day. You can ask questions via the chat feature, and if you have questions as they come up, you're welcome to go ahead and send those in. We'll probably wait till the end of the presentation to answer those questions, but please go ahead and put those in via chat and everybody can see those. We're recording this webinar for folks who cannot actually attend right now. So just remember that if you have a question, somebody else probably has that same question. So for everyone on the webinar now and folks who are going to watch it later, I encourage you to ask those, whether that's about Children's Advocacy Day or advocacy in general, or about the policies that we're going to discuss. Please do share those questions with everyone. So, as we start to talk about Children's Advocacy Day, it's important to think about why is Children's Advocacy Day so important? Why do we encourage hundreds of advocates to get together at the Capitol every year? And it's simple. We know that numbers matter. When it comes to the General Assembly, there are a lot of competing priorities every year, but we know that with this year being a budget year, and a new gubernatorial administration, that sort of changes things. And when legislators see numbers, like hundreds of advocates, whether they're adults or youth, and they're filling the rotunda, and they're filling the halls of the annex, and they're requesting a lot of meetings, they know that these issues affecting kids carry weight with their constituents. You know, the purpose of this day is really to call on legislators to prioritize kids. And Children's Advocacy Day is usually one of the largest or the largest advocacy days in Frankfort, because we know that kids' issues and the future of Kentucky kids, they're common ground for legislators and for a lot of people across the Commonwealth. It's something folks can agree on. So we have enough people there to really make a difference, and legislators have historically responded really well to that. You know, they try to attend the events and move bills forward that relate to kids. They include it in their communications to their constituents, like the write-ups that they get in their local media. They post about it on social media. So it builds some buzz. And it's also an opportunity to just learn more about these policies that affect kids and to spread the word about policies that are good for kids. So even if, you know, people in your networks maybe aren't attending Children's Advocacy Day, but if you're talking about the importance of policy change for kids, that's really important as well. So we're going to move into an overview of the agenda for the day, and then talk about some of the action items that you'll need in advance and afterwards. So on January 23rd, it's a pretty full day. And I know some of you may be just coming for part of the day. Some of you may be planning to spend a lot of time there, but hopefully you will at least be able to come for the rally and maybe to meet with your legislators. So this will be, again, as you probably know, because you have it in your calendars, Thursday, January 23rd at 9 a.m. Material pickup begins on the Capitol mezzanine. So the materials for the day will have folders with lots of resources in them, schedules, lanyards, all kinds of other resources, and there will be folks there who can answer questions. If you have questions throughout the day, you can also come back to the Capitol mezzanine, and there will be folks there who can answer questions. So beginning as early as 9, you can come in and pick up your materials, and then we'll be there throughout the rest of the morning until the rally starts. From 9 to 2 is kind of the window in which you may be able to meet with your legislators. So it's really important to schedule your meetings in advance. We're going to talk about that in just a minute, but schedule your meetings in advance and make up. This is probably when you're going to be able to do that, is sometime between 9 o'clock and 2 o'clock. At 10 a.m. is the big rally in the Capitol Rotunda. And the rally, it's an opportunity to celebrate progress for kids that we've seen in the past year, and also calls, like a call to action for 2020. So we'll have youth speakers, music, awards for legislators who have gone the extra distance for kids, remarks from elected leaders. There's really limited seating, so just a heads up that those seats are generally reserved for folks who really need a chair. So if you really need a chair, be sure to get there early and then kick somebody out if they're in a chair. And just be prepared to stand for it'll last about 45 minutes. So just be prepared to stand for that. And also be prepared to cheer and be really energetic during the rally, because we're trying to really make a splash and make a noise. So please bring all of your energy and enthusiasm for kids to this rally. After the rally, starting at 11, there's going to be an advocacy information session in the Annex Room 125. So the Capitol Annex is the building that's across from the Capitol building, and it's where the legislators have their offices, and it's where there are all the committee meetings. So you can go over to the advocacy information stations in room 125, and then hopefully, be on your way to a meeting with a legislator. But we'll have information there about the Blueprint for Kentucky's Children Policy Priorities that we're going to talk about today. And we'll also have someone there who will have tips for meeting with your legislator. So if you've never had a legislator meeting before, it can be a good place to stop by. At 11:30 and 12, there are a couple of committee meetings. Senate Judiciary is meeting at 11:30, and House Health and Family Services is meeting at 12. These times are subject to change, but for now, those are on the schedule, and there's not any meeting agendas that have been published yet. There may or may not be bills relating to kids or the Blueprint for Kentucky's Children on the agenda. But if you've never been to a committee hearing before, it's a good experience, because before a bill ever makes it to the floor for a vote, it has to go through a committee, and it can be kind of interesting just to hear legislators' questions and the kind of comments that they make about policies. I think it can really help kind of inform your experience as an advocate if you haven't done that before. Definitely prioritize legislator meetings if you can, but I think this is also a really good thing to check out. And then at 2 o'clock, the House and the Senate go into session. So you can really see your legislators in action on the floor. But here's the deal, you do have to kind of work for it a little bit. So the seating is first come, first served to get gallery passes. For the Senate, you will get passes in the Senate clerk's office, which is room 323. Passes are first come, first serve, and you can go early in the day to get a gallery pass. In the House, they do not have gallery passes anymore. This is the first time that I know of that they're doing this. Instead, they're just folks are just making a line outside of the gallery doors. So the gallery will open 30 minutes prior to when they go into session. So the gallery will open at 1:30. You'll just have to wait at the door to see if you can get in. But again, that's also first come, first serve. So you can just start lining up at 1:30. All day on Children's Advocacy Day, we will have a social media station. That'll be on the Capitol mezzanine, where you pick up materials and where you'll hopefully be hanging out before the rally. So we'll have a social media backdrop and an Instagram frame. So snap a picture, share your support for Kentucky Kids on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We have some hashtags that we're following for the day. So like CAD KY 2020, Blueprint KY, and KYGA 20. We also have a Snapchat filter. So if you use Snapchat, you can also check out our cool filter. And another thing you can do all day is go to the tunnel that connects the Capitol building and the Annex building. It's an underground tunnel, so you don't have to go outside if it's cold to get from one building to the other. It's also a good way to stay nice and warm. This year, we have posters that Kentucky Kids have made around the importance of getting all Kentucky kids counted in the 2020 census. And there's also, we'll have some tips lining that tunnel if you can help mobilize and kind of get out the count, or just information about the census in general. So if you want to learn more about the census, or you want to see some cute art from kids, or you want to do both, go see the tunnel and the art in there. And just a few final, well, maybe not final, but a few key tips and reminders as we wrap up the agenda. Get there early. So I recommend by 9:30 at the latest. There is a parking garage, but there's a bit of a walk to get to the door of the Capitol, so account for some time to get to the door. And then there's a line at the door because they check IDs and they search your bag, and you'll have to sign in. And there's also probably going to be a decent amount of traffic just in the hallways, kind of getting to where you want to go. And then as a reminder, just as you navigate around, there is a tunnel that connects the Capitol building and the Annex building. So that can help. You don't have to go through the same bag check and all that to get from one building to the other. You do want to bring a photo ID to get in. All adults need that. Youth do not need an ID, right? They just, so just all adults need a photo ID. Okay, so charge your phone because we want to see lots of photos and social media posts, so be sure to have your phone ready and powered up. Also be sure to eat. There's a cafeteria in the basement of the Legislative Annex. It can be kind of crowded on Children's Advocacy Day, so just like pack a snack if you're like me and you get kind of hangry, just to help, in case there's a wait. And finally, come prepared to be bold. Like, be bold in cheering at the rally, be bold in connecting with other advocates and networking, and be bold in meeting with your legislator and asking them to step up for kids. That's what this day is all about, and that's what they're there to do. So yeah, be brave and courageous for kids. So with that, Mara, I'm going to turn this over to Mara, and she is going to go over the Advocates Checklist with you all.
Thanks, Jessie. So this is Mara. And what we're going to go over now is really in Advocacy 101, but we're framing it around Children's Advocacy Day. But these tips can really be used on a number of issues that you advocate for, and can be used throughout the session as you visit the Capitol or contact your legislators. So first, a few things to consider before January 23rd, before CAD. It's all about preparation, and if you're looking at the calendar, CAD is 2 weeks away. So here are a few important reminders. First, if you haven't already, be sure you're registered for CAD, and once you get registered, you'll be signed up for emails so that you can get all of the alerts as we gear up for the day and any important reminders for the day. And one thing we're doing again this year is text alerts. So if you sign up by texting CAD KY 2020 to 555-888, you will get some day of reminders, rally's about to start, or, here's a map of the annex, and that sort of thing. Don't forget to visit the tunnel. So if you're interested in those, be sure to sign up for that. Also, as Jessie was talking about too, we want you to be on the top of your social media game. So we'll be posting some updates throughout the day on KYA's channels about CAD, but also about bills, the blueprint items that we'll be talking about in a bit, throughout the session. So if you're on Twitter or Instagram, be sure to use these hashtags. They are, specific ones for the session, as well as for Blueprint, as well as for CAD. So just be sure to follow those and to use those throughout the session. And of course, we want you all to know all about the policies that we are advocating this year for. So be sure to visit KYA's website to check out the Blueprint for Kentucky's Children if you have not already. There you'll find fact sheets and an informational video about each of the legislative and administrative priorities that we're advocating for and budget priorities for this year. And another thing, if you want to check out the status of those bills, you can do so with our bill tracker. That is not up to date just yet because we're waiting for some bills to be filed, and that will be updated likely here at the end of this week. So be sure to check that out. It's also at kyouth.org. And then another vital piece here, if you don't know already who your state senator or state representative is, be sure to look that up and know what committees they serve on. So to do that, you can go to either Kentucky's the LRC, Legislative Research Commission page, and they have a Who's My Legislator lookup tool. And we also host one on our website, a legislator lookup tool, and I'll show you that here in just a second. So if you go to kyouth.org/advocacy and scroll down, you'll see the lookup tool. It looks just like this that you see on your screen. You will just enter your address and hit submit, and you will find who all of your elected officials are and their contact information. So their office address, phone number, email address, and even their social media. So you can follow them and have all of their contact information. It'll also give you information on what committees they serve on, so you know kind of what their focus area is on if you are interested in contacting them throughout the legislative session.
Okay, and then there's also a checklist, of course, for on Children's Advocacy Day, and we've already talked about some of this, but the impact of Children's Advocacy Day on legislators is the sheer number of folks who attend and raise their voice for kids. So be as visible as possible, whether that's like going to a meeting with your legislator, whether that's cheering at the rally, attending committee meetings, going to the steps of the chambers when they go into session, you're just hanging out in the hallway, even in the reception area by the offices where you'll have your meetings. It's really cool to see a big crowd of advocates. So just, be there and don't be afraid to, be seen and talk to folks. And then also share info on social media. We know that social media is a really important advocacy space, and that's where a lot of information and advocacy travels now. So, that's using, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, those hashtags. And you can also post, even links to the fact sheets that we're going to share or something like that. It definitely post about what's happening that day, but you can post other resources to build up interest for these policies that are good for kids as well. And then, as I mentioned before, make connections with other advocates so that we can have, stronger alliances for Kentucky kids. So it's a good opportunity to meet other people who are passionate about changing the future of Kentucky for our kids. So I'm going to turn it back over to Mara to talk about some reminders for after Children's Advocacy Day.
All right, so of course there's still a lot of session after CAD. It's a 60-day session, which means the legislature will meet until mid-April, so there will still be many days in which you can reach out. But for immediately following Children's Advocacy Day, if you met with your legislator, be sure to thank them. We find that handwritten notes are best, but you can always drop them in an email or send them a follow-up phone call or something like that. We offer tips on how to, on the best ways to reach out to your legislator on our website, as well as there will be a packet of information on Children's Advocacy Day that you'll receive at the when you check in that day. And another thing with social media is be sure you're following your legislators on each of the social media platforms so you have an understanding of what they're sharing throughout the session. You can interact with them and tweet at them in terms of action items. And as bills move, be sure to contact them. KYA, we put out action alerts, and we know other partners do as well, so be sure you're signed up for our listserv, as well as other partners who work on issues that you care about, so you know when bills that are good for kids or will impact kids are moving, you can reach out to your state senator, state representative as accordingly. And just another reminder, so to check out that bill tracker, that's where we'll have a lot of info consolidated on each of the items that are relevant to either the Blueprint for Kentucky's Children or other bills that are good for kids and advocates should be on the lookout for. All right, back to Jessie.
Okay. So we're going to share an overview of a number of the 2020 Blueprint for Kentucky's Children policy priorities, but just a little bit of background on the Blueprint for Kentucky's Children first. The Blueprint is a coalition of nonprofit, public, and private organizations that speaks with a common voice in order to have a better shot at making positive changes for Kentucky kids. Many of you all that are listening to this webinar are Blueprint partners. And we know that many of you, or many of the folks that will be at Children's Advocacy Day are Blueprint partners, and thank you all for all you do in helping to develop and advocate for this policy agenda. The Blueprint stands on 3 pillars. Thriving communities launch strong families launch successful kids, and successful kids launch a prosperous future for Kentucky. And if you're not a Blueprint partner and you like the sound of those 3 pillars, you can go to our website and go to the Blueprint page on our website and you can sign up to become a partner. There are 13 policy and budget priorities on the 2020 agenda, which is a really ambitious agenda. We're not going to go over all of those priorities today. Instead, there's a video on the KYA website. Some of you may have seen it already. We'll send a link to it in the follow-up email. That video kind of gives an overview of all of those priorities. For Children's Advocacy Day, we're encouraging advocates to focus on a select few of those when meeting with legislators, about half of those. As Mara mentioned earlier, fact sheets for all these priorities are available on our website. We'll have fact sheets available on Children's Advocacy Day that you can give to your legislator, so you don't, this is not your only opportunity to become an expert on these policies. But hopefully it helps, and this will also give you a chance to ask questions. So if you have any questions about what you hear as we talk today, please feel free to go ahead and ask those. So with that, we're going to turn it over to a couple of our policy directors who can tell you more about this year's policy and budget priorities. A few of these already have bill numbers, and I believe there will probably be more that have bill numbers by the time Children's Advocacy Day gets here. But for now, even just talking about the policies will help. So I'm going to turn it over to Mahak, who can get us started.
All right. Well, thank you, Jessie. Hi, everyone. I'm Mahak Kalwar with Kentucky Youth Advocacy. So I'm going to kick off talking about our 2020 policy priorities. The first one I'm going to talk about is ensuring that we have clear and consistent standards on healthy food, active play, and limited screen time in licensed childcare programs to ensure children are growing healthy and their development is they're just growing healthy and being strong adults and turning into strong adults. So we believe at Kentucky Youth Advocates that all children, no matter where they live or receive child care, deserve healthy food and have time for active play. And recently, the State for Childhood Obesity released data indicators from 2017 to 2018 for obesity across the United States. And Kentucky ranks in the top 10 for childhood obesity for children ages 2 to 4 within the WIC program. And additionally, Kentucky ranks in the top 3 for children ages 10 to 17 having obesity. And we know that the child's brain development rapidly develops in the early years, and so it's best to interact with people and not screens. So that's why we're really hoping to strengthen these standards, so that way we are supporting our young children as they develop through the lifespan. So we're going to move on to the next one. Another 2020 policy is ending the epidemic of e-cigarette use among youth and children and teens, so they could grow into healthy adults. While youth cigarette smoking has declined in Kentucky, e-cigarette usage among children and teens has surged within the 2016 to 2018 years. In order to protect kids' health and development, we could, one, enact a tax on e-cigarettes that is equal to the current tax on cigarettes. E-cigarettes are the only tobacco products sold in Kentucky that isn't subject to excise tax. So by adding a tax, we will prevent e-cig use among youth, we'll bring in state money that will help support our state budget, and then also reduce future healthcare spending. Additionally, we could comply with a new federal law raising the legal age to purchase tobacco products to 21. Youth often rely on friends or relatives close in age to get tobacco products. By raising the age to 21, the likelihood of access through their peers decreases. And as you can see on the slide in front of you, those two bills have a bill number attached to it. So the e-cigarette tax is House Bill 32, and then the Tobacco 21 bill is Senate Bill 56. And now I'm going to turn it over to Courtney.
All right, thank you. So the first one we're going to talk about is ending the use of corporal punishment in schools. And a lot of people are surprised when they find out that corporal punishment is still not only legal in some Kentucky school districts, but being used fairly often. So across the states, what we've seen is that school districts have really shifted their focus to understanding how best to engage with children who've experienced trauma. And so one of the things that this makes us think about is, what does that mean for kids in schools where corporal punishment is still being practiced? It can make the classroom become an environment that instills fear and anxiety and makes it very difficult for kids to learn and to grow. So this session, what we are hoping is that the legislature will support the elimination of corporal punishment in schools across the state in an effort to create a safe and more nurturing learning environment for every child. Okay, so then the next one is talking about strengthening the homeschool enrollment process. And there are many parents who choose to homeschool their children, and they do a fantastic job of it. We know that there are kids who are homeschooled who have gone on to attend Ivy League schools or scored really high on their SATs or their ACTs. And we applaud those parents because we know that is no easy task. However, there are circumstances where parents or caregivers choose to avoid the oversight of a school or CPS because of allegations of child abuse or neglect, or because of ongoing issues with truancy. And right now, what we know is that there are minimal steps for a parent or a caregiver to begin homeschooling. So we believe that there is an effective way to strengthen this process a little bit by requiring background checks to ensure that anyone who wants to homeschool a child hasn't been convicted of a violent crime within a certain time frame. Also submitting proof of educational attainment in the form of a high school diploma or a GED, and then also confirming that the child or the children who are going to be homeschooled are not currently labeled as habitually truant. And we just think that by adding in these requirements, we can further ensure child safety and also educational success. So next we are going to talk about strengthening our Commonwealth's effort to prevent child abuse and neglect. So in Kentucky, we have the highest rate of abuse and neglect in the nation, and it's actually more than double the national average. Over the years, we have really made strides and improved how we respond to child abuse and neglect by improving laws that support families and protect kids, but there are still a few gaps that need to be closed. And we're hoping to be able to do so in the 2020 legislative session. So, for example, we want to improve reporting practices to ensure that any time abuse or neglect happens, it is being reported appropriately. We are also anticipating some additional budget investments to support family preservation and abuse prevention efforts while making sure that children who are living in their homes are doing so safely. So this includes funding for programs like START, which is the Sobriety Treatment and Recovery Team, which uses a mentor model to support parents and ensure their children are safe as they go through substance abuse treatment, and also K-STEP, which is the Kentucky Strengthening Ties and Empowering Parents program, which provides in-home services to parents who are entering treatment for substance abuse and still have their children in the home with them. And it's really important to point out that for every dollar that gets spent on START, we actually save $2.52 in foster care costs. And we are also anticipating some additional supports for kids who have experienced abuse to ensure that they get the help that they need in a timely manner and are able to thrive. Okay, so next we're going to talk about another budget item, and that's prioritizing investments for children who've experienced abuse and neglect by supporting kinship caregivers. And again, we have one of the highest rates of children who are living with someone other than their biological parents. And so sometimes that's grandparents, other relatives, or sometimes even close family friends. And these are people who tend to step up to take care of them when they can't safely stay with their parents. We also know that a large number of children are going into foster care or some other out-of-home placement. So for every 6 kids who go into foster care, another 10 are going to live with a relative or a close family friend. And understandably, it's not easy raising 2, 3, sometimes 4 very young kids. And sometimes these people need extra supports, and that can be in the form of a financial stipend or even respite care to make sure that children are taken care of appropriately and that caregivers feel supported in caring for these kids. So we're hoping that during the legislative session this year that the legislature will prioritize kinship and fictive kin caregivers when thinking about putting investments into the budget. And finally, we're going to talk about expanding court discretion when determining the transfer of youth to adult court. So in some recent years in Kentucky, we have made significant strides in how we respond to kids involved in the youth justice system. However, we are one of the only states that requires a mandatory transfer of all kids to adult court for certain offenses. So if a kid is at least 14 years old and alleged to have used a firearm, whether it works or not, in the commission of a felony, state law requires that their case be heard in adult court. And if there are multiple kids who are involved, but only one has possession of the firearm, the law still requires that they all be charged as adults. So we are not saying that kids shouldn't be held accountable for behaviors, but we want judicial discretion to be expanded so that juvenile court judges who work with this population every day can make informed decisions based on a variety of factors, including the seriousness of the offense, the best interests of the child and the community, and also the likelihood of reasonable rehabilitation based on the supports that may be available to them within the youth justice system. And now I'm going to throw it back to Meg for some more budget items.
Thanks, Courtney. In addition to the budget investments that you just heard from Courtney, we are going to encourage advocates to lift up other budget investments, and that includes expanding family recovery courts across the state. With high rates of parental incarceration in Kentucky, this is one solution to keep families together. Additionally, in 2019, Kentucky's General Assembly demonstrated their commitment to improve student safety, health, and well-being with the passage of School Safety and Resiliency Act. And now it's time to continue that progress by providing adequate funding for requirements under that bill. Another budget investment that we are advocating for and hope that you consider advocating for as well is boosting investments in family resource and youth centers in schools. These are also known as Friskies, and these Friskies play a critical role in enhancing student success by removing barriers for students to learn. And lastly is prioritizing Medicaid and K-CHIP in the state budget. Right now, we have 96% of Kentucky's children that have health insurance, and we want to really close that remaining 4% gap. So we want to focus, we want a budget that focuses on initiatives that close that remaining 4% gap. So I'm going to now turn it over to Jessie.
Yeah. Thank you, Mahek and Courtney, for going through all of those policies. And folks, if you are like, wow, that was a whole lot of information, you can read fact sheets about all of those on our website at kyouth.org. And we'll also send out a link to those and to that video I mentioned in the follow-up email. If you're not already signed up for the KYA listserv, do so that you can receive action alerts, because we'll send those out as they relate, action alerts as they relate to bills about these Blueprint for Kentucky's Children priorities. So just some final things before Children's Advocacy Day. Also follow us on social media. Follow the social media hashtags. You can do that actually in advance of Children's Advocacy Day. We're already posting with those, and the KYGA20 hashtag, like legislators and media, like that's the hashtag that folks use to talk about the General Assembly. So you can start following that on social media, and be sure to set up your appointment with your legislator on Children's Advocacy Day. So go ahead and reach out now to their staff and tell them that you're going to be there. You're going to be there for Children's Advocacy Day, and that you want to have an appointment with them. So I don't know if anybody has any questions at this point. We'll just hang out here for a couple minutes and make small talk while y'all think about whether or not you have any questions or comments. Looking at the list of names, it looks like some of you are folks that had been to Children's Advocacy Day before, and then some we didn't recognize. So
this is Mara. One thing to note too is, so in addition to the KYGA20 hashtag, we have seen on Twitter that folks are also using hashtag KYGA2020. So it may be worth using or following both of those to kind of stay in the loop. We've seen both used by legislators and media. So we're kind of trying to make it a practice to use both as well.
we got a question about if we can email the presentation. Yeah, we can absolutely email the presentation so you can share it with others. And we're also recording this, so you can also share the link to the recording, and that will include that in the follow-up email as well. So yes, great question. And thank you in advance for sharing this as well. I'll also note that if anyone on this is interested in bringing a group of youth to Children's Advocacy Day, and you haven't yet done so, we actually have kind of a specialized youth track, if you will. On the Children's Advocacy Day registration page, there's a link there where you can put in your information if you are bringing a group of youth. So I just wanted to flag that for folks. Because there are some other things we can do with groups of youth that we don't offer for adults, like tours of the Capitol and stuff like that. So we just wanted, yeah, to flag that. Any other questions? Okay, seems like maybe no. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, whether those are questions about the policies or questions about the information that you heard today, or if you didn't hear something today and you're like, oh my gosh, you know, I need some more information. Please, you can reach out to any of us here on the webinar. You can reply to the email that we're going to send out with all of the follow-up information. We definitely want folks to be prepared for the day, so please feel free to contact us if you have any questions. And a reminder, if you're with an organization that is not yet a Blueprint for Kentucky's Children partner, we encourage you to become a partner, and there's a form on our website to do that. And also a final shout out to all of the Children's Advocacy Day sponsors. You'll find a list of those on the Children's Advocacy Day registration page, but those sponsors are really who make this day possible by providing materials and supplies and all that kind of stuff that, you know, we need to pull off such a really large advocacy day. So thank you to all of those sponsors for making this possible. All right, and if there's no other questions or comments from any of us? I think that's all for today. Thank you all for spending this time with us today, and thank you all in advance for coming to Children's Advocacy Day and being advocates for kids.
We'll see you on the 23rd.
See you on the 23rd.